You see, so what I do is I make a distinction between evolution and Darwinian evolution. Now, these guys, they had a court case, you know about the Dover case. Okay, they had a Dover case about intelligent design, the National Academy of Science, and you had Michael Roos as one of the witnesses, and you also had William Dembski, Kenneth Miller, all these guys, they all came, right? Long story short, this is near the end of it. They say about should creationism be given equal time, right? Intelligent design was ruled to be pseudoscience at that time.
Okay.
During the Dover case. Do you know why it was ruled to be pseudoscience? And why they call it pseudoscience?
Go ahead.
They actually ruled it by definition. They said science only deals with the natural, the observable, therefore, and is based on methodological naturalism, therefore intelligent design is pseudoscience.
Okay, I wouldn't agree with that.
Okay, good you don't agree with that. But just to point out,
I don't agree with intelligent design. I do agree with evolution, but I don't think the argument you just put forward is a cogent argument.
No, it's their argument.
Yeah, I think their argument isn't cogent on that point, and I'd agree with you.
Good. And the reason why that argument's not valid is because there is no clear-cut distinction between science and pseudoscience. There's a huge demarcation problem, and there's grey areas. Now, some things are clearly not science. For example, astrology. We know that that's not science. Some things clearly are science, but it's a grey area, like evolutionary psychology. Yeah. There's certain things there. There's certain things like Freudian theories. Are they science or not? However, the way intelligent design was pushed out by the National Academy of Sciences.
I'm not defending them for doing that.
No, but I want to point that out because when you handed this to me, I looked at the thing right near the end where it said, why can't we teach creation science in my school? Now, this is the thing I want to point out, right?
Okay. Can I preface this?
Sure.
You are slightly shifting the goalposts, I think, to, I know that some of the materialists, some of these scientists, the hardline atheists, I think they're disingenuous in their arguments against religion, and I can agree with you on that. We don't need to spend too much time. They're a disingenuous representation from materialist scientists with regard to arguments about God, and I think Dawkins is somewhat blinded, okay? And in his recent debate with Jordan Peterson, I think you can see where that clear division is.
Or even Dennis Noble.
Yeah, okay, I think Peterson is cutting to the heart of the spirit of religion, and I know you'll have differences of opinion with him. You'll agree that he's cutting to a metaphysical dimension that Dawkins seems to be immune to.
Yeah. I wouldn't say immune to. I would say his epistemology doesn't recognize it.
Yeah, okay.
Because he's fundamentally a follower of scientism. He says God is a scientific hypothesis.
Yeah.
So when you have that kind of blinkers on, you're not going to see what Peterson's saying or other thinkers are saying. And to be honest, this is not everything Peterson was saying is things that Keith Ward would have said to Dawkins years ago.
Okay.
I mean, these are things which are really well known, but the reason why I pointed this out is because the National Academy of Sciences, what they did in their argument against intelligent design was unethical.
Okay, maybe it was.
And I'm trying to explain to you why it was unethical.
Okay.
Now, I know you disagree with intelligent design, but on the minimum...
I think intelligent design, if you dig deeper, may be compatible with Darwinian evolution if you allow a linking kind of thought process, yeah? If you make it black or white, it has to be one or the other. But if you can see a level of symbolism maybe in this, then maybe it's compatible.
So I wouldn't
a lot of religions have embraced that.
So I wouldn't even say symbolic or metaphoric. I would say even if you accept the evolutionary story by natural selection and design, they are compatible. There's somebody I'm interviewing tomorrow, and I've interviewed him in the past. His name is Erki Kajonin. He's written a book called Evolution and Design, right? And what he does is he shows is you can have a total naturalistic story, yet it doesn't undermine the design argument. Which, by the way, that's...
You profess he says that. I can't accept it just because you say it.
No. What I'm saying is, people can make the argument that design is compatible with evolutionary theory. I don't deny that.
I hope so. I think that's the way forward.
Yeah.
So I like Adamic exceptionalism. I think Adamic exceptionalism is an excellent bridging mechanism. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've had Professor
Yeah.
Malik, and I've seen you
Yeah,
guys
yeah.
have chatted
So,
with
no,
him.
that's
and
a-
he's heading in the right direction.
No, see, that's a particular element. I want to look at the broader picture first.
Okay.
Because I think what's happened is this. For many, many years, Darwin's views were misrepresented.
Okay.
Because Darwin's views were, you can be an ardent evolutionist and you can believe in God.
Yeah, because
And-
he was brought up in a time when believing God was the default. He was a Christian himself, and he had to grapple with his faith in the face of his understanding of evolution. Yeah.
It wasn't exactly like that. So,
Just roughly and broadly, what I'm saying has some.
so you see, the motivation wasn't due to his own religious belief. It wasn't. Because he was a deist. He didn't believe God intervened. When he published the
Yeah, I'm
Origin
a
of
deist.
Species, right? You're a deist, right? So you know, deism states God doesn't intervene. It's not theism.
Yeah.
So for Darwin, what he had in his mind was that you can have a naturalistic process which unfolds, right? And that process is something which can dovetail with the belief in God. Now,
Yeah.
he actually went further because he had a friend called Asa Gray,
Yeah.
who's an American biologist who believes in God. So Asa Gray actually was pointed out as an example by Darwin of somebody that can be an ardent evolutionist and a theist. Now, what did the neo-Darwinists do? The neo-Darwinists used evolutionary theory, one, to show it to be true in a way that is not in line with the evidence. That's the first thing they did. Secondly, they metaphysically abused it. They used it to push atheism, right? And this is something that they've been doing for decades. And the God delusion I pointed out is one example, but there's many other examples where they did
Okay,
this,
can I
and we can't ignore
Can I
that.
interject?
Yeah.
You know much more about the facts of the history of this debate. Okay? What I'm trying to do is distill them down to an evaluation for a layman's point of view. I'm a layman, okay? Now, I disagree with your conclusion, even though I know you know more facts, because knowing facts and being able to evaluate facts are not the same thing. What we're evaluating here is a process. I'm not responsible for all the abuse of the system by other people in the past. As a layman, what I see is, I'm explained a process called evolution, which seems fairly simple. A being, a life form will tend to reproduce a copy of itself, except occasionally there'll be a mutation. If there's a mutation, it will have a new adaptation, a new characteristic, which may fit with the environment or not. If it's advantageous in the environment, it's more likely then to be passed on to the next generation, then that becomes the new default. It's a very, very simple mechanism. And you agree that it works with regard to other species, I believe, yes?
I don't actually.
In the lab with like fruit
so,
flies and all of this
no,
stuff.
so I'm going to explain to you something which is very important. As a supplementary process, as a, if you like, tertiary even process, we do observe basic things, which is that if you have a particular mutation which can facilitate an adaptive feature, then you're more likely to survive than not. That's clear.
That's clear?
There's no denying
Okay,
that.
so far so good. So
Yeah.
where do we differ?
So the difference is to use that to say that explains the biosphere. That's simplistic.
Yeah, it's a more ambitious claim.
Okay,
But-
not more ambitious. I would say it's an almost it's almost like using the smallest element you have and to go to the massive unknown without looking at the complexity of the world. So it's completely unjustified.
It may be that.
But let me explain to you why I believe that's the case. In 2016, this is where I use examples of others who've said the same thing. In 2016 at the Royal Society in London, the same place where Darwin in 1858 presented...
Again, you have so many more facts.
No, but I'm explaining to you what happened. You had two groups of scientists, one led by Dennis Noble, right, who is a non-neo-Darwinist, evolutionist, and you had Darwinists. And they were arguing about this basic point. Is the simplistic notion of natural selection plus random mutation sufficient to explain all of life? And some eminent scientists believe the answer is no. Other scientists believe the answer is yes.
The line for is it abiogenesis, yeah? I mean the transmission, the
Sorry, say that again?
transmutation, is it abiogenesis?
No.
The jump from the material structure to the organic life structure.
No, they didn't debate that.
They didn't debate
that. See, Darwinism begins after life.
Okay, I mean the Miliary experiment, yeah?
No.
The deep mystery seems to be in that terrain.
No, yeah, so they weren't talking about that. They were talking about the mechanism, right? So Dennis Noble, James Shapiro, Carl Woese, and these are big figures. I'll give you an example. We have archaea, we have bacteria, we have eukarya. We have the domains of life, 3 domains of life. Any biology textbook, you're going to see these 3 domains of life. Carl Woese discovered archaea. So he is, if you like, one of the most important scientists of the last 100 years. He did not believe in natural selection plus random mutation is sufficient to explain all of life. So James Shapiro wrote a book called Evolution, A View from the 21st Century, and he's somebody who is a naturalist, but he doesn't believe in neo-Darwinism, right? Carl Woese said about his book that this is a game changer. So here we're talking about heavyweights.
I'm not going to dispute any of your facts, but I want to contextualize this.
No, but I want to contextualize it from the sense that not all scientists believe natural selection plus random mutation is sufficient for life.
I never said they did. What I'm saying is it would seem to be a point of fact. You mentioned 3 or 4 quote heavyweights, yeah? And you think they represent significant evidence in your favour. I'm just going, it looks like there's 190 Nobel Prize winners who are also heavyweights, who if they were here now and I asked, do you believe in Darwinian evolution, would say yes, and the reason I think that is, they published to that effect. Now, as a layman, which is what I am, and what most of your viewers are, when I'm trying to work out where does the truth lie, if I was trying to be objective and honest with myself, I think I would be unwise to conclude that the 4 heavyweights that you listed completely obliterate any consideration I should give to 190. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm just trying to, methodologically, I think there should be an element of doubt in my mind, if I'm being honest with myself.
So
yes? Is that doubt a reasonable conclusion for an objective person?
I'll actually amplify what you're saying. I won't disagree. I would go as far as saying what Dennis Noble said, which is that 90%, above 90% of scientists do not believe, do believe neo-Darwinism is sufficient. Now, I actually...
Thank you.
Well, no, that's
it's good that people know that as a point of fact.
Of course. Okay. One of the arguments that was made during the discussion between Richard Dawkins and Dennis Noble, and Dawkins made this point in his new book, which was just released, The Genetic Book of the Dead as well, which is, if Dennis Noble is right, then all of the scientists that have been working for decades and publishing papers in genetics, in zoology, in biochemistry, all this stuff, they've all had the wrong assumption, they've all had the wrong framework. So I agree with you.
You may be correct, but as a layman, that's another assertion which is being made by another expert in the field, in the face of hundreds of experts in the field who would disagree with that assertion. So as a layman, I've still got to conclude it's undecided and best.
Let me explain something. I'm not actually disagreeing with what you said. I'm actually amplifying it.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying, you pointed out 2,000 something scientists. I'm saying the vast majority of scientists believe in neo-Darwinism.
Right.
I actually don't disagree with that.
So in the face of that, why are you 100% confident? Can we get religious for a minute? I'm hoping it's something more than just going, because I've accepted that the Quran is the literal truth, that's my predicate, and anything which contradicts it must be wrong. I'm hoping that's not the crux of your argument. I'm hoping that you can accept, you're 100% rejecting neo-Darwinism for another reason apart from
but let me just explain something. Dennis Noble believes in human chimpanzee ancestry. He believes in all species came from one origin. So when I'm talking about the third way of evolution, Carl Woese, James Shapiro, Scott Turner, or any of these guys, they all still believe all of life came from one cell, essentially, right? They don't deny universal common ancestry. So this discussion is about the mechanism of evolution. It's not actually about universal common ancestry. However, the question that you've asked is a good one. Why am I 100% certain? And I would say this, Tony. I'm not 100% certain.
Wow.
I'm not.
That doesn't mean that you're wrong.
But
I want to be clear to you.
Sure. But I am 100% certain about one thing. I'm not 100% certain the third way of evolution is correct. I am certain 100% that there is significant challenges to neo-Darwinism which have not been addressed, and therefore the jury's out. I believe the jury's out. So, for example, Dennis Noble said neo-Darwinism is dead. I don't believe neo-Darwinism is dead. I believe the evidence for neo-Darwinism is dead, but I believe it's alive in all of the biological circles. I believe sociologically the theory is far too strong to be upended by Dennis Noble and the third way of evolution.
Okay.
Right. So,
but do you think it's also reasonable for a layman? For a layman. Cheers. I was going to. I'll tell you in a minute. We're chatting right now. It's reasonable for a layman to say the jury is out.
I believe that too.
Okay. Therefore, it's reasonable for a layman to have doubt as to which of the two beliefs they have. So it's reasonable for the layman to have doubt that evolution is intelligent design is the truth. It's reasonable to have doubt in that. And we know we're heading towards Sheikh. It's Sheikh or Sheikh?
Yeah, sure. So let me just point out one small thing, which is.
And I'm not trying to smash the religion. I'm just trying to, stress test.
Yeah, no worries. Let's stand here. So just to end the point, because we're going to have to move. Okay. The third way of evolution has nothing to do. Sorry, we're just filming. Give us 1 second. The third way of evolution has nothing to do with intelligent design. Neo-Darwinism has nothing to do with intelligent design. Proponents of third way of evolution and intelligent design are both critics. Proponents of neo-Darwinism and the third way of evolution, Dennis Noble, James Shapiro, they're all critics of intelligent design. So this debate.
Okay, so I think we're not micromanaging different strands. It's like arguing about different strands of democracy. Yeah, you can have first past the post. You can micromanage the argument about the strengths and weaknesses, but the basic principle stands. And the basic principle of evolution, neo-Darwin or otherwise, is one of non-intelligent design through random mutation and then adaptivity to the environment.
No. So see, this is where I disagree.
But would these 190 scientists disagree?
No. Okay. So no, I think we've convoluted 2-3 different issues here. Let me just explain something. This is something I cover in my new book, which is going to be published by the end of the year, right, by Sapiens Institute. Neo-Darwinism and the third way of evolution both do not undermine the idea of design. They both do not. That is not a scientific position, it's a philosophical position based upon where you start off from. It's got nothing to do with the science itself.
I understand, this is your assertion, and now I'm saying, if I ask these 190 scientists if it does or not, they would disagree with you, yes? It doesn't mean they're right, but as a point of fact, it's very likely they would disagree with you.
So this is where it gets a bit confusing. Francis Collins is part of the National Academy.
Well, there's 190 people here. It doesn't have to be every single one.
But I'm giving you an example of one that I know.
If I ring the NAS and I ask them, do you agree with Suboor's assertion? I assume they would say no.
What's my assertion?
Your assertion that creationism is compatible with Darwinism.
No, it wasn't creationism. I didn't say creationism.
Intelligent design. No, intelligent design is compatible.
So let me say the statement, and you can ring them and check it.
Please. Hey, I'll write it down.
Yeah, sure. Oh, you can listen to the recording.
Okay, cool.
The belief in design, the belief in God, the belief in intelligent design is not a position which is undermined by neo-Darwinism or the third way of evolution. That's an independent philosophical position that has its own arguments, so people may believe it or not believe it. Science itself is silent when it comes to these metaphysical issues, which is the position that you would have if you take the philosophy seriously. Wow.
This isn't working. I had a bigger problem with this one.
In fact, they say it too.
Forget it, we'll get one.
There's a section there where it says evolution doesn't undermine God in the same paper you gave me.
I think you're trying to reframe it as a metaphysical question. And,
it is though, it is.
Well, if you ask, is God involved, it becomes a metaphysical question. But you can ask the question of evolution purely within the framework of biology, which is what the Nobel Prize-winning scientists are attempting to do. Yeah? And within that framework, it's a very cogent interpretation, I think. They may be wrong, but you're asserting that they're definitely wrong, or are you asserting they might be right? Or are you asserting there's no contradiction?
So let me just make it clear. They believe intelligent design is pseudoscience based upon bad argumentation. I already spoke to you about that earlier. But no scientist in the world can use evolution to say that design is an illusion unless they're using a metaphysical framework.
You can't prove there's no design, but
Using science.
You can't prove there's no design using science, but you can argue as to the mechanism via which design was achieved. And it's possible that design was achieved via the evolutionary mechanism which they proposed. It's also possible it was achieved via Adamic exceptionalism, which has also been suggested. So these are three possible mechanisms. Number one, God magically goes, let it happen, and it happens.
Okay.
Number two, you get God going, I'll put a process in play which is that of Darwinian evolution, and I'll let it do the job for me. Or number three, Adamic exceptionalism, which again God puts in play. These are three viable mechanisms, and the point of conflict here is between which of them is the most viable, yeah?
Okay, so let me, just to summarize, none of this is a scientific discussion.
I don't agree. Some of this is, sure.
Okay, so the premises may involve a scientific fact or
Yes.
scientific theory,
Yeah.
but the arguments are being made within theories of metaphysics. So
I'm not trying to do that though.
No.
In that there's you and me talking now, and I can't be responsible for what all these other people think. I'm trying to think for myself. I want to be honest and objective and look at facts. When a bunch of people who are expert in an art and they know more than me say something, I think I'd be foolish to completely ignore them, okay? And I don't want to fall into an argument from authority. I don't want to slavishly follow them. On the other hand, I can't completely reject them. I'm presented with a theory of evolution which to me seems thankfully simple. The idea of mutation and adaptation to the environment is a very simple guiding
But Tony,
principle.
I think you're convoluting something here. That's one theory of evolution. That's the Darwinian theory.
I know, the Darwinian theory to me at least seems simple to understand and endorsed by a wide body of highly esteemed scientists. Therefore, I can't eliminate that possibility. What I'm left with is, if they're right, if I embrace that they may be correct, is that compatible with a God, an interventionist God, a theistic God, and it may be.
So I think we're converging on a point. Science, we're going to pray there. Science has nothing to do with this, except as an input in an already in different metaphysical frameworks. So, if you start off with materialism, you input the science to come to a different conclusion. Then if you start off with theism, you come to a different conclusion using the same science. So science is not the adjudicator here. There is philosophy being done. That's all I'm saying.
I'm not saying that you're wrong. It depends on the question you're asking. If you're asking the question, did God create man? Then you're asking a question which has got a metaphysical dimension and a biological dimension, yes? But if you just ignore God for a minute and look at the process in the lab of how did these organic beings come to be the way they are, you don't have to engage God in the question at all. It can be a purely biological question. Yeah? Now these scientists, they're not trying to include God in the picture. They're trying to eliminate all of that, not because they necessarily believe or disbelieve in God, but because God is not a scientific issue, it's a metaphysical issue. Their job is to deal with the physics and the biology. In their attempts to do that, they've drawn certain conclusions which seem cogent, I think, and they seem cogent in the lab, and the idea that the conclusions they've drawn can then be 100% dismissed, which some people assert, seems premature. I think clearly as a layman I have to adjudicate there is grounds for doubt. Now doubt to me is not a problem.
Okay, so some things that you said I don't disagree with, but there is one thing I disagree with if you meant this. The National Academy of Science, it represents 2,000 whatever scientists.
Sure.
But let's just say it represents 200,000 scientists, or 2 billion scientists, whatever it is.
It's 2,500, I think.
Whatever it is.
Okay.
Let's just say they represent all scientists that ever existed.
Okay.
That entire monopoly, if they are, you've given them the credibility in terms of the Nobel Prize and all these things,
Yeah.
they can still come up with an argument collectively as an academy which is false. And that is the argument that they came up with in the Dover trial.
Okay, so it sounds like the authority that I'm quoting from has made invalid arguments in the past, and that should be on the record, if you're correct.
And the invalid argument is based upon
I don't know.
design.
Hang on. Just because they've made parallel invalid arguments doesn't mean that their core precept is invalid.
So I'll give you an
I'm happy to
example.
say they're not perfect. I don't